During the press tour for Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.3, James Gunn let slip 2 bits of key information regarding his next movie, probably the single most important upcoming comic book movie, certainly for DC, Superman Legacy, and following this, we got a wealth of information regarding the movie. This all started during an interview with James Gunn and Chris Pratt, where Gunn joked that he wants to cast Pratt as Krypto the Superdog in Superman Legacy. He was joking about the casting, but not about the character. Gunn then confirmed that this is a scoop for the interviewer, confirming that Krypto the Superdog will be appearing in Legacy, which isn't exactly surprising, considering James Gunn puts animals in every single one of his comic book properties. In fact, Volume 3 was all about animals, and Krypto has a sizable role in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Plus, he did hint at Krypto a couple times on Twitter, so it was looking likely that he will be appearing, verging on already confirmed, but this does officially confirm it. And Krypto being taken seriously as this Kryptonian dog and not having anything about him change for realism's sake will differentiate Superman Legacy greatly from any other live-action Superman. And while I wouldn't say I've ever been like a Krypto #1 fan or anything, it is always fun to see him, and there's absolutely no one like James Gunn to make you emotionally connect to an animal. I think we can all agree on that. So for now, we know that Clark Kent, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Lex Luthor, and Krypto the Superdog will be the characters appearing in Superman Legacy. There obviously will be more. These are the characters that have been confirmed. In another interview, this time an autocomplete interview with Sean Gunn, James dropped the bomb that Superman will begin filming in January 2024, which was completely unprompted. The question wasn't about when it's going to start filming, he just added that information, which I do greatly appreciate. It's also much sooner than I expected, considering the movie will come out a whole year and a half after that, in July 2025, but this does mean that they will be taking their time with the movie, but also we will certainly learn all about the cast and probably costumes in the next half a year or so before January 2024. A few days after that, a few articles were released by The Hollywood Reporter and Deadline detailing a lot about who is and who isn't in contention for the roles of Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor, plus a mysterious villain who for now is being addressed as Apex. Usually if something like this is wrong, which The Hollywood Reporter and Deadline have been, James Gunn will debunk it, and while he did address it, he didn't debunk it, so it is definitely worth looking into, and it definitely has a bit of credence. But let's begin with the actors in contention for Superman. According to these articles, a very popular fan choice, David Corenswet, is a top contender who's advanced to the screen test stage, which will occur sometime in late May to early June. I think David definitely looks the part, but I can't really speak to his acting chops or if he feels like Superman. I haven't seen him in anything. All things considered, from what I've heard, and considering he's made it as far as he has, and I definitely trust James Gunn to cast the right person, he's probably a fantastic choice. He's also 29 years old, which is about the age I would have hoped for, as it's in the older side of what the age range seems to be, which seems to be around 25 to 30 something years old, as I think a 25-year-old would have been too young and a 35-year-old would have been too old. I think 29 or 30, as he's going to be soon, is perfect. There are apparently 2 other actors who will be advancing to the screen test stage alongside Corenswet, but their identities are unknown, so it seems like Gunn has narrowed his picks down to 3, and David Corenswet is one of them. The other 2 actors might be Tom Brittney and Andrew Richardson, who were mentioned by one of these articles to be in the early mix for the role. However, neither of them really look much like Superman, so I doubt they made it very far. However, there is also Nicholas Hoult, who was first said to be in the running for Lex Luthor, which is a very interesting casting choice. However, a Deadline writer later corrected that, saying that Hoult was actually up for Superman instead. Hoult, who previously played Beast in a few X-Men movies, was a top contender for Batman before Robert Pattinson got the role, so clearly he's interested in playing another superhero role, and clearly Warner Brothers also likes him, which one of the articles states that they have since his role in Mad Max Fury Road back in 2015. I think that Nicholas Hoult would be an inspired and very interesting choice for Lex Luthor, but I can absolutely not see him play Superman. He's also 33 years old, which is probably too far over the age range for Superman that they are looking for. Finally, popular Superman fan cast Jacob Elordi, the article says, didn't even submit himself into the running, so that's not happening. The article actually gave us far more definitive names for the frontrunners who may be playing Lois Lane compared to Superman. However, it does warn us that sources say that these might just be chat room names. While there are more people who may have gotten far, there is a bit less truth to whether or not they did make it that far, so keep that in mind. This list includes Emma Mackey, Rachel Brosnahan, Phoebe Dynevor, and Samara Weaving, with Rachel Brosnahan specifically being said to have given a fantastic audition, with the very strong caveat of her being over the age range, or at the very least at the top end of the age range, at 32 years old. It isn't exactly all that much older than all the actors that I mentioned that are in the mix for Superman, nor is it all that much older for all the actresses in the mix for Lois Lane, as they all range between 27 and 31 years old, but at 32 years old, Rachel Brosnahan is less likely to be cast in the role, but I'd say probably all these actresses could be good in the role. Again, I trust James Gunn's casting process. It all just depends on their chemistry with the actor who's playing Clark and who is playing Clark, and how good they are at being these snarky reporters and Lois Lane. I'd say just based off of look, Emma Mackey is definitely the most Lois Lane to me. Just look at this image where she's wearing a purple sweater and has black hair. That's exactly Lois Lane, but we'll see what happens. Based off of all these casting rumors, it does seem like the casting call for Lois and Clark were for Caucasian actors only, as all these actors are white, who are in their mid-20s to early 30s, probably between 26 to 32 years old. The same is probably not true for Lex Luthor. Nicholas Hoult, who is 33, was set to be a contender for Lex in the initial article, but was then corrected to be up for Superman, leaving Lex with 0 contenders for now. However, another article from Deadline states that James Gunn has talked to a Guardians of the Galaxy cast member to play Lex Luthor. The writer of the article will go on to say that it seems like that's not happening, but there were discussions. More specifically, the writer said that he talked to this actor during the Guardians of the Galaxy press tour, which eliminates any actor who was like in a minor role in the movie. Specifically, because I know a lot of people will mention this, Michael Rosenbaum, who was in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3, and is probably the single most beloved live-action Lex Luthor ever. However, I don't think he was on the press tour. He was barely in the movie. I don't think he had a line in the movie, and I would much rather go for someone new and someone who was closer to the age range of Clark and Lois. My guess for which of the actors it would probably be is either popular Lex Luthor fan cast Dave Bautista or maybe Bradley Cooper, although neither were very active in the press tour, and both are 50, which I feel is too old, especially compared to Superman. They don't need to be the same age, but I think Clark and Lex shouldn't be more than 10 years apart. Otherwise, they're from different generations, and maybe something would feel off. However, aside from these actors, which I could barely see them in the role, I don't see anyone from the Guardians of the Galaxy cast being Lex Luthor, especially the ones who were on the press tour, aside from maybe Karen Gillan, since she has a lot of experience being bald. Obviously, don't take that seriously. The article would go on to say that the movie will have a villain who's currently being cast under the codename Apex. Another article states that Gunn is looking at black actors to play the role. I'm not sure if that means exclusively black actors or not, but that is what the article seems to imply. Apex might simply be Lex Luthor, who just a few years ago in the comics got this temporary huge power-up with the help of Perpetua, the literal creator of the multiverse, when Lex was merged with the physiology of Martian Manhunter, which temporarily killed Martian Manhunter, to become what is known as Apex Lex Luthor. It is certainly possible we'll be seeing something similar in this movie, certainly not involving Perpetua, and probably not even involving Martian Manhunter, but with a power-up and design similar to Apex Lex, although I doubt they'd even call him that. It'd probably just be Lex Luthor with that design. Which actually makes sense, considering the movie takes inspiration from All-Star Superman, in which Lex is granted 24 hours of Kryptonian abilities, allowing him to go toe-to-toe with Superman. Maybe it'll just be that with the design, the more interesting design, arguably, of Apex Lex. If this is Lex, that means that Lex will be played by a black actor, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, especially compared to Superman and Lois. There are characters like Superman and Lois that I don't think you could change the race of and then claim it's the same character, given their 80-year history of looking a certain way, but that's not exactly true for Lex. He was portrayed with black features in the DCAU, he was black on Harley Quinn, was almost black on Superman and Lois, even if that did end up being a part of a twist. My point is that I do think Lex Luthor can be changed to be black, and still be Lex Luthor fully. And if you connect the two, so Apex will be played by a black actor, and Gunn discussed the role of Lex Luthor with the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 cast member, then there's only one possibility, Chuck Woody Iwuji, who was on the press tour. However, this wouldn't really make any sense for like 3 different reasons. Gunn already used him as a main villain, he was great and all, but I think we'd all prefer someone else for a different villain. He was also already used in the DCEU on Peacemaker, where he played Myrn, which is one of the most connected to the new DCU, if not the single most connected thing from the old DCU that will remain the most intact. Also, he's almost 50. Again, that's too old in my opinion. This all leads me to conclude that Apex is actually probably a completely different villain, maybe who's going to be the main villain of the movie, while Lex is a side villain with a more overarching role in the larger universe. And if that is true, who is Apex? Well, aside from Bloodsport, who's obviously not going to be used, Superman doesn't really have any other black villains, so it can honestly be anyone. The name obviously makes you think that he's going to be some sort of Apex Predator, which can fit a number of different villains, although none of them really all that well. There is Brainiac, who hunts worlds and Kryptonians, and is certainly the #1 most requested villain for Legacy, who's somehow never been used as the main villain of a Superman movie, at least not theatrical. There is also Parasite, who hunts down people to consume their life force. Parasite could definitely work, but I can't really see him being used as the main villain outside of how he was already used in this very particular way in Superman Man of Tomorrow. In that movie, Rudy Jones is a kind-hearted veteran with a family who's turned into a monster by accident, who then can't control himself, and that connects very nicely with the overall theme of the movie of people's fears over aliens, with a nice dichotomy of them thinking Superman is a human and Parasite is an alien, when the truth is the other way around. It's a great story that I'd recommend you watch, and probably the best take on Parasite ever. However, unless James Gunn does the exact same thing, which I doubt he'd do and I hope he doesn't, then Parasite would be a relatively boring main villain. Then again, Apex might just be the side villain, in which case, yeah, Parasite works, and in fact, that's my best guess. Brainiac was a bit of a stretch, and no other villain really fits the moniker of Apex as well as Parasite, aside from Lex Luthor, but if that's not happening, then it's probably Parasite. And like I said earlier, James Gunn didn't debunk any of this, but he did address it in a tweet that added more information. In this tweet, he said he wouldn't comment on actors auditioning for a role unless the actor makes it public themselves. The tweet ended saying that there's only one person who's been cast in Superman Legacy so far, and they aren't one of the regular players in the Superman world, ending the tweet with a merman emoji. The uninitiated might think that this means Aquaman will appear or something, but anyone who's seen Peacemaker knows the significance of this emoji in relation to James Gunn's show. James Gunn then confirmed the character from Peacemaker will be appearing in Superman by liking a tweet of somebody recognizing the emoji is from Peacemaker, and then more specifically liked another tweet of somebody replying to this initial tweet with a gif of Vigilante, the character who used the emoji on the show, with the caption simply being that emoji. And even with that emoji connecting to Vigilante, and even with Gunn liking this tweet, Vigilante would still not be my first guess for the character who's appearing. One of the government types like Waller, Harcourt, Adebayo, or even Economos would seem to make a bit more sense, but then again, we don't know anything about the plot. It's likely Superman won't be constrained to Metropolis, and we'll see more of the DC universe, including maybe a cameo from Adrian Chase, aka Vigilante. And yeah, sure, I loved Vigilante, so I wouldn't mind seeing more of him even if it is just a cameo, but this also connects to one final thing that one of these articles talked about: other heroes from the DC Universe appearing in this movie, which seems to be happening. This is actually from the first article from The Hollywood Reporter, where they talked about how outside the classic Superman trio of Clark, Lois, and Lex, the movie will also be populated by many different faces as it seeks to introduce DC heroes that are already established in this movie's setting. This does actually shed a bit of light on how important this movie will be for this new cinematic universe. It won't just introduce Superman and his world, but fully establish what is and what isn't a part of the DCU. This movie will be the perfect jumping off point and beginning for this universe. You watch this movie, you'll know exactly what characters, what heroes, and what actors are in this universe and what is not anymore from the DCEU. We could see an interaction between Superman and Batman, a race with the Flash, a fight alongside Wonder Woman, a brief fight against Green Lantern, and more, just as a few random examples, all played by the actors who will then go on to play them for the foreseeable future in this universe. This is certainly similar to what they did in the DCU in BVS, with the rest of the Justice League being introduced in cameos before the team then came together, but while that didn't work, I think the difference will be in execution. I trust that James Gunn wrote these interactions into the story story organically in a way that highlights and focuses on the character of Superman without a feeling forced, to show Superman's place in the universe and his importance. Also, we will be getting some solo projects anyway before the Justice League, so Superman Legacy will definitely fully clear the air as to what is and what isn't in the universe, but it won't exactly be these characters' sole introductions and roles before a Justice League movie. So there is a lot to look forward to here. This movie is definitely my most anticipated movie that we know is going to be coming out in the future. I mean, any movie at all, because of the sheer importance and what this will mean, not just for the DCU, but for comic book movies in general. Plus, James Gunn never misses, so this movie is bound to be great. Let me know your thoughts on everything I talked about. Who would you cast in these roles? What do you want to see in this movie? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you like this video, bye.